Okay, we are live now, Liz. It just
my screen,
popped up.
a couple seconds, I think. Okay.
Okay, welcome everybody to our March meeting. Before we get started, I'm just going to read this out. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held virtually. Members of the public who wish to comment as per an item on the published agenda must submit their statement. COVID-19 pandemic is being held virtually. Members of the public who wish to I'm hearing myself. Did I keep going?
Somebody needs to mute.
I think Liz has got it on YouTube there.
Yeah, but there's some kind of delay. Oh, if you mute
Yeah.
it.
I think Liz has got it on YouTube there.
Yeah, but there's some kind of delay. Oh,
Yeah.
Not sure.
You jinxed yourself earlier.
I know.
Do you want the audio consult?
I know. Hey Nick, so everybody's freezing and it's like there's an echo, but a really delayed echo. Yeah, we can't even like have the meeting really. Yeah, so everybody's freezing and yeah. Yeah, we can't even like have the meeting. Nick, can you hear me? Yeah.
It looks good on YouTube. Ask the chairperson to talk.
Jenny, can you talk again?
Sure, I'm talking now.
Jenny, can you talk again?
Sure. I'm talking now.
Should I stop the link and just restart? Okay. Yeah. We can't, in the room, we can't, we can't even function because there's an echo. Do you think I'm on the wrong audio or something? Okay. Yeah, FaceTime my phone. I'm gonna hang up here. Okay, bye. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, FaceTime my phone. I'm gonna hang up here.
Hey Liz, can you mute your Zoom?
I just did.
Okay. Hey, turn it around.
Okay.
And so you're saying you're hearing an echo?
Yeah, it's like a 5-second delay echo. I mean, we can't even have the meeting really if we can't get rid of it.
Okay, well you have to get out of YouTube. That's a problem. So click out of your YouTube up there.
Oh,
See that YouTube?
yeah.
So click out of there.
Okay.
But now it's just on Zoom.
Oh, there. Okay.
I'll try.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
I'll stay on the line. Let me know if that works.
Okay. Jenny, I'm testing again. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, it's good. I think the problem was we were on YouTube and not just Zoom. So I think we have it resolved.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, all right.
I will resume reading of this paragraph. I'll start from the beginning. Okay. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held virtually. Members of the public who wish to comment as to an item on the published agenda must submit their statement or question in writing to elizabeth.zimmerman@skokie.org, and all properly submitted statements or questions will be presented and read during the relevant portion of the meeting. Written comments may also be submitted by email to citizencomments@skokie.org or by mail to Village of Skokie. Attention, Elizabeth Zimmerman, 5127 Oakton Street, Skokie, Illinois, 60077, or via the Village's Dropbox located by the public entry to Village Hall. Okay. First item on our agenda is the approval of the February meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
All right,
That was Jim.
that was Jim. Yes, I recognize your voice. Is there a second? Anyone? Bob? All right. All those in favor? The hands all say yes. Okay, next on our agenda, some old business from our last meeting. The Sidewalk Gap Evaluations, which are in progress. A small group of us met earlier this month to go over the rubric that Liz has come up with to rate sidewalk sections of the village that don't have sidewalk, to rate where they should be on the list of priorities. So the higher the score, the higher the priority is. So we're working on that now, and with the goal of getting that to Liz by April 16th, for those of you who are working on those, so that we can work on staying on timeline for hopefully getting everything we need to in place, figuring out where we're gonna focus on, getting residents involvement and approval as necessary, and then getting that out for pricing and ultimately putting those in the fall, hopefully. Liz, is there anything I missed?
No, I don't think so. The week after, I plan on just getting everybody's data together and going through the ratings. I might have some follow-up questions. We might have to do some inspections with trees and engineer issues such as grading and things like that. So yeah, I think it's moving along. I think it's good.
All right.
Liz, what was the date again that you wanted all the data? I thought we had, I don't recall what it was.
I think we said about a month, and that meeting was a few weeks ago. So I was looking at the calendar, and I know I won't be able to look at it until after spring greening, which is the next item on the agenda. And so April 16th, or even that Monday, if you wanted to use that weekend yet, April 19th would be fine.
Okay.
All right. Excuse me. Speaking of spring greening, as we talked about last month, spring greening is April 18th this year, and it's going to be much more limited in scope than normal. It's just recycling for electronics and paper shredding. None of the other vendors that are there. And it's at Old Orchard in the empty lot west of Laverne Avenue. So,
Just kind of across the street from where it normally is.
Okay.
On the Old Orchard side.
Can you access that from Lawler, or do you have to get it from Laverne?
I think everybody's going to be coming in off of Old Orchard. There might be a queue on Lawler going past the high school if it gets to be a popular event, but we're hoping to route traffic from Old Orchard heading south.
On Laverne or Lawler?
Laverne, yeah.
On Laverne, okay.
The road that goes through the mall.
Okay, okay, cool.
It's a good thing that they were able to, I guess, that we're able to do that at all. I know that a lot of people seem to have a lot of electronics and the like to recycle at any given time. And I think the paper shredding thing always seems to be fairly popular. So at least given the times we're in, at least we're able to do that. So.
Yeah, we've been told that the events are really popular so far this spring. And so we're expecting a really good event, a busy event.
Liz, do you need help? Do you need volunteers to help staff?
Sure. Yeah, we can. We work with the park district, and so if anybody is interested, they could email me, and I can get you in touch with the right staff. I know Spring Greening has a website as well through the Skokie Park District, so that might be another option to try.
Yeah, I think there's like a link usually to sign up to volunteer on the website. So, and I thought I did take a little bit of a look at it this year, and I think there's something similar this year. So.
Yeah, one of the emails I got either from the village or from somebody who said they were specifically looking for volunteers.
Okay, thank you.
Liz, is it first come, first serve, or is there any scheduling?
Right. We weren't able to do, so although Swank really liked our suggestion with the timed entry, what ultimately presented the problem was all of the Swank events for the different Swank communities are, we're allowed to go to any event, they're allowed to come to our event. And we ultimately just kind of talked it through and decided with other communities coming in, they wouldn't be aware of our marketing and the timed entry, and that would present a problem with just logistics. And so we decided not to do the timed entry. So it's first come, first serve, 10 to 1.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Next on our list of old business is the vehicle sticker list, which is something that Chris had asked about at our last meeting, and I'll let Liz you.
Yeah, it's my understanding, Chris, that they actually have the list. They were able to get that from the vendor. There's just some information that needs to be, that can't be public, obviously. And so they're cleaning up that list, and I'm not exactly sure when that will be available, but it should be really soon. So we do have that data. No, it's for Chris Bucola. Are you there, Chris?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys
Okay.
hear me?
Sort of.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
All right. And then next, our Soul Smart program has been extended, and Liz, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, it was very timely. So after our last meeting, a day or two, I got on the website and I saw that it had been extended. And like a day after I had checked the website, our rep reached out to me and asked if we wanted to go for silver. And so we scheduled a Zoom meeting with her and also our community director, Matt Brandmeier. And Matt kind of reviewed the requirements and what needed to be done, and he's fairly confident that we can go for that gold designation. And the timeline is reasonable. The extension, I think it's at least a year. And so we just, at this point, we don't see any problems with going for that gold designation. So that's good news.
Yeah, I looked into this after I got that email, and it's interesting to see it because the amount of stuff that you have to do, there aren't that many communities that are silver. They're in the area. When I'm looking at the map, it seemed like there were more gold than silver because the amount of stuff that you have to do to get from silver to gold, it's just like, might as well go for gold. But I was checking out Evanston because they're gold. And it was interesting because one of the things that Soul Smart requires for gold is well, there are two things with the village code. One is just like specifically saying that solar is allowed, and the other one is not putting stuff in the code that will stand in the way. And so I figured there'd be a bunch of stuff in Evanston's code about solar, but it turns out it's just like, unless I was missing something, it was really just a couple of places where they just added solar panels to, garage, tennis court. These are all structures you can build. And then they have a section which gives, a couple paragraphs of specifics about what you can and can't do with these solar panels, as far as kind of like looks and things like that, which is something that SolSmart actually tries to discourage communities from doing. They don't want people to discourage people from doing the panels, but because when I saw this, I was thinking, whole revision of the code, but it turns out that at least looking at Evanston's case, you really don't actually have to do that much to the code. But that is one of the things about silver and gold. As my understanding was, silver you put on the website a notice that solar panels are allowed, and gold you actually put it in the code.
Yeah,
if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, for the bronze designation, we had to come up with a solar friendly checklist, and so essentially if you go to the Skokie site and you do a search for solar, you'll get the information, but SolSmart very strongly believes that the absence of language is a hindrance, and so they really promote having it in the code.
Yeah, but I was surprised there's actually very little in Evanston's code. They treat it just like everything else, basically. They treat it like a garage, other than one little section where they lay out some specifics. In other words, it doesn't seem like the code part is a huge deal. The 3-day turnaround part, they specifically on Evanston's application, it says we'll turn this around in 3 days.
Yeah, that was something that they really wanted, and I think one challenge we have here is our village electrician. We just have one person that was trained, in reviewing those permits, and so that's something we have to do a little bit more research on. I don't even know if that training is available. If we can send a second person through, and I need to look into that a little bit more. So,
well, I think isn't the silver part basically getting everybody trained?
Well, we are our electrician was trained through the program, but I'm saying for the 3-day turnaround, if he's on vacation for a week or something like that, I'm just not sure how strict they are with the 3-day turnaround. So
it was interesting. If you look at Evanston's application, it's actually very short and simple.
Good. I'll definitely.
Evanston, I don't know how typical Evanston is, but I was kind of surprised. I mean, maybe that's an Evanston thing, or I wouldn't think that would be the case, though. I would think that they would be really trying to burden people with forms and that type of stuff. But their form is very simple. The code doesn't have a whole lot of stuff in it, and I was just a little surprised at that.
Well, I think with the application, I mean, you can only put whatever is in the code. Like, you can only hold residents to what's in the code. So if the code is simple, then the application is going to be simple as well. The permitting is going to be simple.
Maybe, but in the meantime, Skokie has an application right now, so they've got something there. Oh, by the way, it did. What about that question I had about the part of the website that links to? So part of the website says everything in Skokie that you need to what's the word? You need to fill out an application, a permit for, and it lists everything, but it doesn't list solar panels, and it doesn't have a link to the solar panel application.
Oh, okay. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
I have a little stack on my desk of website revisions.
Yeah, that seems like an oversight.
Okay. Let's move on to our new business. Our very own Bob Render is starring in a feature film coming to a Skokie email near you. Yeah, one of you guys want to talk about it? Liz or?
I'll let Bob take it
Bob.
away.
Well, it's pretty
quick and dirty. I mean, they showed up with their camera. We had some questions. I was asked a couple questions, showed people really how easy this is to do. Then we interviewed Mary Beth Shea from Collective Resources. And the only disruption was, of course, right when we started, a landscape service was across the street making all kinds of noise, but we worked around it. So hopefully I didn't make a fool of myself, and it should be good. And I think that turned out fine. I don't know what you thought, Liz, but.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to see it. And so we had kind of a village spokesperson there, and Bob did a great job, and Collective did a great job, and their driver showed up, and so we've got a couple shots of the driver. And we're gonna reach out to Collective before we run the video to see how many people are signed up for their subscriptions, and then run the video and see if it makes any impact, if we get a few new customers out of it.
Can you start from the beginning? What is this video?
Bob, do you want to?
Did I miss something?
Where Liz?
Okay, so Collective had reached out to us to do some promotion for Earth Day, and they were thinking website or newsletter or something like that, and we just kind of decided to do a how-to video because we just think that not a lot of people know that much about composting, and I know Bob was really happy with the program, so I emailed Bob, and Bob jumped on the project right away, and before you know it, we had a video shoot on Monday to show how the food composting program works.
So this is for Skokie residents.
Skokie residents and businesses, and it's in the edit process right now, and we're hoping to release it Earth Week.
Right.
IMAX.
It could go viral. You never know.
IMAX 3D. What?
Yeah.
So we had an organizing meeting, and one of the things that we talked about, which I think maybe we should all just talk about a little bit, is how to promote this within the village. And there are a couple of suggestions. I had suggested maybe that if a person agrees, when they sign up, that they put it. The person who comes and brings you a bucket puts a sign in their lawn for a couple of days, that says "I compost" or something like that. I mean, and the community program is really good. I mean, I just think that we should. I don't know if you want to have an incentive program, get somebody to do a neighborhood challenge. I don't know. It just seemed like it's such an important program that we should try to promote it a little bit more. That's all.
Simple
Yeah.
yard sign would be effective, I think. Yeah, if people are willing to do that, that
You want
certainly.
to see their neighbors are doing it.
Yeah.
Social media too will probably be pretty critical. And I wonder also, maybe the company can put signs up at the parks this summer. I mean, the parks are, there's a lot of parents who go to the parks, speaking from experience. And so, that might be a good place to get, at least that crowd, at least that demographic.
Right. I just signed up for Nextdoor. I guess we could post on there too.
I was going to ask, speaking of social media, which I think we can pretty much all agree, plays a big role, I think, in everyone's lives nowadays. I know that Skokie, I think there is an Instagram account, as far as I'm aware of some sort. I don't know whether we could promote the service somehow, like post a little video on, or even, I don't know, adapt what we've got or create something new and post it on the Instagram account and promote it that way.
That Instagram
possible.
account. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know much about Instagram. If they do they take videos on Instagram?
Yeah.
Sure, but I think Skokie's account seems pretty dead. Is that thing even? I'm looking right now. I haven't seen anything from Skokie in a long time.
I was aware of it existing, obviously.
Yeah, Village of Skokie. Last Instagram post was November 2nd, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
It's a happening site, man.
Yeah, I guess it hasn't been all that active then.
Skokie Parks is posting though.
Oh, cool.
So we could ask them to post. There's also groups like parent groups and like social groups throughout the, you know, it would just be a question of us posting like through our personal accounts, basically.
Yeah, I just don't know if we have anything that already exists that we can potentially make use of, but it sounds like it's kind of gone inactive some time back. So
Skokie was doing quite a bit on Instagram a couple of years ago. Like somebody had a drone and they were putting up all these cool drone videos. And I suspect that whoever was the Instagram person left.
yeah, and I know that
Maybe not, but you know, they were putting up quite a bit for a while on Instagram.
Well,
yeah, I know that there was something, I was just gonna say, I know when they had some murals also done, they posted some, I think, information or something about murals and things.
Yeah, 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
So I was going to ask what the regulations are around like handing out flyers at, you know, there's voting going on, and then there's vaccine drives, things like that. I know that obviously I don't want to do anything, you know, with politics, like with voting, but composting seems fairly benign. I don't know if there's regulations there.
I was going to say, if we're allowed to do something of that sort, I actually created the sort of newsletter of sorts that we were able to hand out at previous events like spring greening when there was a trade show indoor component. And I kind of kept that up, and I kind of came up with this little year in review because of the pandemic. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of what we've been doing or what's been going on environmentally speaking. So I came up with something, and the collective resource thing kind of takes center stage. It's like a 2-page double-sided thing, and collective resource takes kind of center stage. That's on page 1. So maybe that's something we could give out.
Can we put a QR code together? Like, I know that that's like a fairly easy thing to do, so people could scan instead of having to take a piece of paper.
It seems sort of silly for us to be out handing out paper to people. But when we were working on anti-reusable bag campaign almost 2 summers ago, we were standing outside grocery stores handing out bags. You know, obviously times were different, but just the idea that we were out handing out things, I think that's a good idea. Just maybe if we even had a sign that had a QR code on it and we can tell people about it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely take the point. It's just, I was thinking like that also not everybody who might be interested, like I know that I have a neighbor, not to like stereotype, but there are people, particularly I get that there are some very tech savvy senior citizens out there. I'm sure there are plenty, in fact. So I'm not stereotyping or anything in any way, but I did want to make sure to reach those people too, who may be interested, maybe environmentally minded, you know, eco-friendly, want to do something, but may not have, for whatever reason, a computer or internet or something like that, because you don't want to leave those people out. It's kind of like, I think along the lines of why, granted, the vaccine, I feel like is quite important now. So, but I mean, it's kind of similar to why I think they felt compelled to print postcards, because there are those people who, for one reason or another, don't have a computer.
Well, we could certainly have some, and if people want to find out more, we can give them one, but not where we're just trying to shove them in people's faces.
So yeah, that's why I wanted to make some available, because I don't want to exclude anyone. So
we could probably put signs up also at the Park District. I think there's events, there's like camps and stuff going on this year. Is that right, or have they been canceled?
No, they have classes also now going on.
Okay. So we could put signs up, you know, not necessarily something that they can take away, but put a sign up, you know, that's just posted if they're willing to let us.
Liz, do you know if Collective Resource has that sort of material?
Oh, I can reach out. I'm not sure what they have. They would, I know that they would frown upon printed material, but I can reach out regarding the QR code and you know, some of that. A direct link to their website would be great. Yeah.
Okay. What if we made some signs, like we could use signs from the election that is next week, and then either, I mean, there might be too much information, and a QR code we obviously couldn't hand paint, but even if we printed out something and just put them on those. You know, otherwise we're relying on them to get us signs, and it doesn't sound like that's something they're interested in.
Yeah, I'm not sure about recycled signs or much about that at all. So I'd have to look into that.
Call it repurposed signs.
And I will say, as far as promoting the collective resource electronically, I do think there is some information also about collective resource on our webpage as well. So there is that also for those who are inclined to go to our webpage.
True. Bob, did you have something to say? No, you're
No, I was just.
okay. Your thing turned yellow for a second. I didn't know if you were starting to talk.
Well, I think, if we get some of this feedback to Mary Beth, that'll be good. Like the art side thing, and we should just, I don't know, it just seemed to me that we should have a goal of like 500 signups by the end of the year.
Yeah, it seems like, I know we did a lot of saw a lot of increase early on, and I thought from what I heard last, we're kind of just mostly plateauing. So
do we know, out of curiosity, how like it compares to other communities that have the same service through a collective resource?
No, that's a great question. I think I can reach out and get some of that information from her, and then maybe we can set an attainable goal, because I have no idea if Bob's 500 is attainable or if it's crazy, but if we have kind of a sense of, maybe what the other communities are doing, or what, like what the best community did, and we can set a goal for trying to, beat that. Maybe that's a good start.
I wonder also if maybe maybe we invite them to come to that event and say like, hey, come out to spring greeting, have a poster that says like, don't like to waste, neither do we, or whatever, and just have them out there. I don't know if they're able and willing to do that. But that might be a good, and then we could promote that too. We could say, hey, and if they're also able and willing to come out, to community locations, like to parks or the park district or whatever else, we can say like, hey, they're going to be here on this day. If you have questions, like come talk to them, wear a mask and distance, but they'll be there if you want to talk to them in person or whatever. I don't know where we would say that and to whom, but
there's always, I wonder if there's an opportunity to put that in like somehow into like a news Skokie.
Oh yeah.
We did run a piece 2 months ago, I think, on them in News Skokie. I might be off on it was recent though.
Lisa?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the village, when we have events, obviously we haven't had any this year, but events like the commissioners, when they're honoring the commissioners, the big like cocktail party, and do we have collective resource at these events? I know, for example, my synagogue uses them, and there's like a fee that's tacked on to event space rental that goes to them. And I was just, if we're gonna encourage our residents to do it, is the village doing this also?
Great.
Using collective resource, and the park district and businesses?
Jenny, I think to my knowledge, the Backlot Bash was
Yeah, right? So the Backlot Bash did it before we had the franchise agreement. It was 2019, and I believe the franchise agreement was entered in late 2019, like late fall, winter. So I don't know if there were any big events that were village offered or sponsored, whatever, that have since the franchise agreement at least. But
Yeah,
it's a really good idea. I think that it's a good publicity for the program also.
yeah, because I think it did say as part of the thing that January 1, 2020, I think was the official like beginning of it for like the franchise agreement, right?
Sounds about right. I just remember when it was roughly voted on, and it was very cold out.
So
But
actually, that's a good point, Lisa. I wonder if the, if faith based institutions would also be a good outreach, right? A good place. Because, I'm wondering like how many of the, how many families who attend the synagogue participate in it, right? And so like specifically yours, Lisa, and then I'm wondering like if that would be some promotion through the synagogue would help, right? And so then other institutions as well.
Well, my synagogue's in Evanston, but
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably a fine thought too. So let us get together with them and talk about sort of what some of their marketing interests are in that regard too. I just wanted to chime in on the village event question that was raised. My recollection of their arrangement with the village is, in addition to that first event where they helped us do some waste sorting at that Backlot Bash event that Jenny was referring to in 2019, that event was a little big for them to offer that sort of as a gratis service to us going forward. However, my recollection of the agreement that they have with us is that they do agree to come and provide that sort of zero waste consulting service and really hands on the ground service at a smaller community event, at least one, I think, if not two annually. So I think there is an opportunity in the future, if it's maybe the board and commission reception or a similar sized event, that they will come in and provide that sort of composting service. We would need to obviously work with in advance with the host for that event to make sure that we're doing things like using compostable cups, compostable plates as the case may be, so that it sort of supports the whole theme and notion of what we're trying to do there. But that is a service that they do agree to provide to us to help in that role or in that purpose.
I think the boards and commissions event might also be a good place, because since it's at the hotel, most of what they use is not disposable, and so there'd be less of that having to get all the compostable stuff, because they use real silverware and real plates and cups. So it's mostly just scrap.
Yeah, so we would
Going
need
in
to work
there.
with Earlene and make sure we sort of have a common understanding of an event size that she
Mhm.
thinks is appropriate and not overwhelming for her. But yeah, she's very much interested in having that same opportunity.
And Max, I think from what Lisa said, it sounded like the service at her synagogue there's actually a fee associated with it. There's a cost associated with it, and I'm wondering to what extent the village might be able to, to pay for that, to demonstrate, its commitment to at these events. And I'm speaking a little bit out of turn because I don't know exactly all the background, and I'm not entirely sure of the size of these events and whatever else, but I'm just wondering like if the village can, sort of like show that, this is our value, like this is what we value. And so, promoting this is important to us.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think we could explore. We have done things like offered the compost bin rebate program. And so we talked lightly internally, and I'll turn and look at Liz because she had sort of come up with this. Could we expand that idea in some manner or form to touch on an idea similar with, collective resources? There's some sort of incentive that we might be able to offer as sort of, I'll call it a short-term stimulus to get people to engage with collective resource. And so I would look at this as sort of a riff on the same theme. So I think that's an interesting thought and maybe something that we could, take a look at.
I think this would make a great public program at the library when we can offer programs again. We've had good luck with them before. And I think composting would attract a good crowd, that subject, because people really don't know how to do it, and we all have a lot to learn. It seems like when we can gather again, but just something to think about in the future. Hopefully soon.
Are you envisioning it? I think that's a really good idea, and I've been talking to a couple people at the library recently who are looking to partner with us on stuff. They had actually reached out about doing some things for Earth Day, and we are just getting back off the ground. So we're not, I said we had not been planning anything. But are you envisioning this as being, we could do, the orange bin composting is, it's not complicated, but it's not super simple, but it's somewhere in between. It's not like backyard composting, which is a much more involved process. So we can maybe do something on both, but as a way to tie in the curbside.
I've been thinking of the solar program that we offered at the library, and it drew such a good crowd. It was standing room only. They had to turn people away. So I think this could really give a boost to that program.
Sure, Lisa.
A free public program.
Emily Oaks in the past, I know, has offered different kinds of composting. They've done worm composting, but then they've also done other as classes, so park district classes. And maybe as part of their classes, we could get them to say, like if they're talking about them, they could say, well, now that you know how to do it, if you don't feel like doing it, you can just pay to have it done with collective resource. Do they know, does the park district even know about this? Does the village talk to the park district?
Yes. I think I've seen the orange bins at Emily Oaks. I haven't been in the building in a long time, but I know they compost. They've been doing their own composting there for a long time. But I thought they have them I can find out if they're willing to work on cross promotion. Hold on, let me just put that down.
Just to repeat another composting class when they have one or two or maybe even more typically in a year. There's maybe other things that we could do. I'm not saying it's bad to do one at the library, but I don't know. Work with them.
The more avenues, the better. So yeah. Okay. Somebody said something that I was going to respond to, but I think we have a lot of good ideas on where to go from here. Obviously, another avenue is the schools in normal times. So hopefully that's that's a really good way to reach a lot of people. If the school is doing it, none of the schools in Skokie are participating in collective resource, but there are schools in Evanston that were doing it. And that's a good way to get information out to kids and parents, and they see it in action. So hopefully we can start that up again. Anyone else have anything on the topic? Okay, let's move on.
Thank you for sharing, Bob.
Let's move on to the greenhouse gas inventory, and I'm gonna pass this to you, Max.
Okay. Excuse me. I think a week ago, Friday, we sent out some light weekend reading for you folks, which was the greenhouse gas inventory that was put together by a consultant working on behalf of the village of Northbrook. I hope you all had the opportunity to flip through that. I thought it was a pretty well done piece of work, but I think really the point of it was to give you a relevant, close example to, a suburb that's close to us that you would have some familiarity with and get a sense for what a form of a greenhouse gas inventory looks like. Liz and I had a Zoom conference call with the consulting firm that did that work for Northbrook last week. We spent about an hour, I guess, and 20 minutes on Zoom with them, just talking through what went into the development of that inventory, cost, data that goes into it, time sequences, things of that nature. And Northbrook undertook that survey as part of some broader work that Northbrook had done in development of a climate action plan. And so we wanted to visit with the consultant just to understand the cost for that service. So having gone through that explanation, I mean, I think we feel pretty good about having an understanding of the work and how much that would cost. I think in broad brush, the consultant suggested to us that for a community of our size to do something that's comparable to what you saw that was done in Northbrook, that the budget figure would be something along the lines of probably $7,500 for a community of our size. The work product would probably from beginning to end be a work product of some 3 to 4 months worth of work. So if that is something that we are interested in moving forward on, I think that's pretty encouraging. It was encouraging to me in terms of, I think it's a pretty reasonable amount of time and resource level that I think we would have available to us to undertake that work. We would need to obviously go through, if that was our choice to move forward on that, obviously we would need to get the resources in place to do that from a budgetary standpoint. Just as a point of reference for all of you, the village is in the process of preparing its operating and capital budgets for our next fiscal year. Our fiscal year begins on May 1st. The village will get into its operating budget process and public hearings on that in May. The village board will transition, I believe, at the second board meeting in April. Budget hearings will commence in May. So that whole thing of deliberations on village spending will take place in May. So that will be coming soon. But nonetheless, to get consulting services, if that's the direction we were going to go, we would go through a request for qualifications type process. I would add that, looking at the work that Northbrook has done in the last year has been helpful to us in that regard. We do have the benefit of some of the work that they've done. So we have the consultant submissions that were received by Northbrook. So we have a nice listing of a dozen or so consultants that submitted qualifications for Northbrook's process. So we sort of have a good feel for who the recent respondents have been for consulting services. So we do have the benefit of seeing some of the homework and the legwork that was done there. So we feel pretty good that we would be well positioned to get out into the marketplace in pretty short order and make that process move along and be on a time sequence to get the work completed, I think, pretty reasonably in 2021, which I think would be achieving, our bigger goal or objective that was laid out in the current sustainability plan. We were able to sort of pick the brain of the consulting firm in terms of some of the issues that we've talked about that may be somewhat unique to Skokie, the Edens Expressway issue, how they would take into account, having the MWRD plant in Skokie and how you factor that into the equation, or alternatively, how you factor that out of the equation and some of the nuance that goes into that. We also talked about the benefits of undertaking, a study of that type for one community when you're in a dense suburban environment surrounded by many other communities, and sort of the pros and the cons of doing it on an individualized community basis versus a little bit more regional basis. I think the point, not to beat this to death, or at least initially anyway, I think the point that was made was, looking at it from a multi-community standpoint, there's really not an economy of scale that would be achieved by partnering with other communities in doing an inventory of this type, because by its virtue, the data is going to need to be broken down, sort of recognizing community boundaries anyway. And so there's not a real economy of scale to be realized by looking at it as a multi-community approach. And fundamentally, if the point of doing this is ultimately to get to the point of identifying goals, objectives, or perhaps making changes to legislative or regulatory processes for your community, you should probably really be focused in on data that's relevant to your community versus seeing an amalgamation of data with other communities. I don't suggest that we are not interested in what's going on with our neighbors, and we would certainly, I think, be interested from our standpoint in collaborating with any of our neighboring communities that wish to engage in a more regional approach to things. But I think our impression is that it probably seems to make good sense for us to go ahead and see about pursuing doing this for our own community. I think I had indicated in our last discussion, there was some interest out there, and I've talked with Morton Grove, just to name one community, about this notion that somebody like perhaps the Metro Mayor's Caucus through or part of other regional COGs might be interested in doing something that's more regional. I would just again suggest to you that while something like that may come along at some point, I don't think it's going to come along very quickly. And so I don't hold out much hope that if that comes to pass, that it's going to come to pass quickly. So I guess as I look at it, I don't see that there's a real negative to us in moving forward along on our own direction. I guess that's the quick overview of sort of where we've been in the last 30 days on this subject matter. And I guess I'll just stop there and ask for comments or questions.
I guess the one thing that comes to mind for me as far as the other community stuff is just if and when other communities did something similar, whether there'd be comparables as far as kind of comparing them and eventually ever doing something together, whether the types, if they're different consultants, you know, just making sure that the same types of results are given to each community so that we can do something with the others and have comparable stats and documents.
Yeah, I'm not fully proficient on the jargon and the acronyms and sort of the standards that one uses when doing these inventories, but there is, or there are, as we are told, some standards for how one conducts these inventories. And so I think we will see certain consistencies out there as communities start to do this. And I think there certainly will be, as part and parcel of doing this, benchmarking of one community's data versus other communities. And that's both good and bad, as I think. And I think that's something to be mindful of, and that our boards will be mindful of. There may be a concern that when Skokie's data gets looked at, it will be compared to Northbrook, or it will be compared to other communities that have done these studies. And so inevitably there will be comparisons about, well, why does Skokie look this way versus this town, or look that way versus another town? But at the end of the day,
Northbrook puts it in its marketing materials.
Sure, and I think, yeah, you're right. Any town, I think, will take and extract things to put in its marketing materials, and certainly we are probably no different in that regard. So, you know, we're cleaner, or we use more renewable energy than you do, or something. So yeah, that will happen. But to me, I think ultimately, obviously, it's important that we begin to know us, whatever us really is. Do we know who we are and what we are?
So a couple of points on that. I'm sorry, Rob, but a couple of points on that. They do in their document on page 11, they talk about the methodology they use. They use the global, what is it? The global protocol for community scale greenhouse gas emission inventories, which sounds like a global, you know, a standard approach or a standard protocol for doing those kind of things. So I would imagine that other communities have done a similar type of thing, or at least there'd be some direct comparison, say, well, we use this protocol, this is what we came up with. The other thing I like about this is that this one study shows 3 comparative years. So it shows the trend over time, which I think would be really helpful, regardless of what the absolute numbers are, showing what the trends are and where those trends are being affected. Like, for example, if you look at this, it shows that overall greenhouse gas emissions in Northbrook have declined, but in one area where they've increased is in the ground transportation, for example. So that could, that could be an indicator of something we might want to focus on. So that kind of information would be very useful. And for $7,500, I mean, that sounds like a pretty good deal. We'd get several years worth of usable material out of that.
Yeah,
Not 7,500.
we have are really, really good. Like I'm looking at it right now again, and like the data they have and the points they have are really good. I'm actually very impressed with this.
I was just going to, I don't want to interrupt, but I was just going to say that just at the outset, right, looking at the Northbrook plan, I think there are, I mean, obviously, I think we have sort of a moral or ethical obligation, I think, obviously, to do what's right by the environment. But also, I think that it puts, from what I understand, it does put us in a better position to get funding as well from maybe federal or state or whatever other grants. So I think it also kind of pays for itself in that sense. So I think it's a small investment that could over time be recouped and maybe even, beyond that.
Good point. Bob, sorry, you've been trying to talk for a while.
It's okay. My only point was, is if Northbrook would share how much staff and prep time was included, so that when we make a budget request, we make sure we cover enough resources to actually do the work to provide the data, so that we get good data. And then if there's any opportunities for volunteers to help assemble data. So it might be just interesting to know what the undertaking was like. And then post-study, what data they continue to collect, so that we, again, have resources to continue to collect the data. I think they did a great job.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. We have not had contact of any substance with Northbrook staff as of yet, other than a few quick questions on the front end. We did talk with the consultant about the nature of the data collection. A lot of it, certainly the energy data, will come largely from ComEd and from NICOR and the large energy suppliers. A lot of it, frankly, will come from the Public Works Department. So a lot of it will come through myself, from Liz, and from our water and sewer superintendent, Gene Sher. Maybe because in our Public Works umbrella here, we've done the electrical aggregation programs out of our shop, if you will. Liz is in Electric Ag 2.0. We're the interface with the utility companies. We do the building maintenance for the village. We do the automotive function for the village. So a lot of the data gathering for village operations, and because of the Electric Ag involvement for the village's sort of energy efforts, we're the ones who interface with a lot of the utilities. So a lot of the lion's share of that data is going to come sort of through our umbrella anyway. So you're kind of looking at the people who will be responsible for a lot of the data gathering. So we do have some sense of that, but you're right. We should reach out to Northbrook staff and sort of see what some of the ancillary or spill off from that was. And so that's something we do need to follow through on.
Jenny?
Yeah,
I would, okay. I thought the report was really impressive, but I did wonder, how do they plan to use it? How are they going to apply this study moving forward? And I think that kind of information is important to get out to the public before we embark on a study like this. What is the purpose? What is the goal? How are we going to tell this information? Just something to think through and start putting that down on paper, as well as collecting all the information. because it could lead to really profound changes. And that's good, but we need to think that through, I think, before embarking on such a study.
That was going to be my point as well, that we really need to think about like what, you know, what we really like, what sort of directions we want to go in, or like what we, you know, I noticed that one of the charts says that 1.5% of emissions are village, like our village emitted emissions. And so my question is, you know, like what's the appetite then for like more strict regulation of residents, right? It would have to be through legislation. And so what's the appetite for that? If we really want to make significant change, you know, is that something that we can do? As far as like, you know, through code and through ordinances and whatever else, like, so that's one of my questions.
Yeah, it's obviously a fair question.
Randy?
Yeah.
I just wanted to, well, first of all, Max and Liz, thank you. I'm very encouraged, and I was very impressed by the report. And, you know, Emily, I think this is the group, this commission is, you know, and it comes in an ideal time, I think, because we're going to embark, or you're going to embark on the next 5-year plan for the village. And the village board does look to this group to set some of the goals and the vision for the next 5 years. So I think this report is coming at an ideal time. And you should know that, you know, the mayor has publicly said at board meetings several months ago that he's fully committed to completing this 5-year plan, including this energy audit. And I think the spirit and feeling among the trustees currently is they're going to be extremely supportive. And so I think there's not going to be any problem figuring out a way to pay for this and to get it done in 21. And I think it's a great way for this commission to go into the next phase of coming up with the next 5-year plan. It's going to give us a lot of data and information. And, you know, that's what's needed before, Emily, I think as the trustees, they want to feel comfortable that there is some data before they start to pass more stringent ordinances. So this is exactly the type of data that and trends that we could see that would be they would give a way for the village board to go forward with some more ordinances. So good work, Liz and Max. I think this is really exciting and important.
I have another quick comment also. Oh, sorry, I don't want to.
Go ahead, and then Jim.
Okay. So Max, I completely understand, and I hear that there's no economy of scale. You know, there would not necessarily be an economy of scale, and each community would need, you know, its own independent data in order to be able to be effective. But I think if we look at it from the environmental perspective and the perspective of the results, there actually would likely be an economy of scale in the sense that if multiple communities signed on, the benefits would likely become exponential, right? If we partnered with our neighboring communities. And so I completely understand what you're saying, but I'm hoping that while we pursue this individually, we will still look to our neighboring communities and still have those conversations with them and still seek to partner with them, you know, even as we go through this as an individual community, that we wouldn't let that go sort of as a separate endeavor, to encourage them to also participate and to partner with us.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that sentiment. You know, those conversations continue and they're ongoing. It's just trying for us to strike a balance between trying to assemble, if you will, a broader grouping and already recognizing, you know, I can, you know, tick through and think of some communities that I think would be interested in collaborating and doing something. And some of our neighbors that I already know are sort of going off in a different direction. And so I'd be very happy. I mean, to be clear, there is not necessarily a cost benefit to
Sure.
partnering with other communities, but to be clear, there is not a cost penalty either.
No.
So it's relatively cost neutral if we have 2 more communities with us or not. It's neither pro nor con.
Well, and I mean, the benefits, the environmental benefits could be exponential, right? So the cost would
there's
stay the
certainly,
same.
if we could assemble that.
Yeah.
And I don't think going this way doesn't prevent future
No.
collaborations. It's just
right.
The idea is not to wait for that.
Yeah.
Because there's no huge savings, and there aren't any other compelling reasons to not go forward with it. And obviously, yes, what you're saying would be better if that were the case, but that isn't a reason to hold us back, and it's something to strive for in the future. But
100%. I just hope we don't let that go. Like, we don't let go of the idea of encouraging them, of working actively to encourage them while we pursue it individually.
That's a good consideration. Jim.
Yeah, I too want to thank Max and Liz for presenting this. I just want to say, to me, the real value in it is to set up a baseline for yourself, because we can have all the programs in the world, but for the future, we want to know our progress. Did we make any changes? Did we make improvements? Currently, we have no measures to measure against. So that, to me, is the biggest value in setting up a baseline that we can measure ourselves against in the future, 5 years from now, like Randy said. How did we do? So we need something. So that's all I want to say.
Charlie?
Getting to the question about how we would use this, and building on Jim's point, it is a baseline. But I also think, if the experience of the last sustainability plan taught us anything, is that the sustainability initiative is a fairly broad agenda. And while there are a lot of things that we got to, there were some things we didn't. And a baseline or a study like this, data like this, would help us focus our priorities. Okay, like, of all the things that we're going to focus our energy on, like if we're going to approach the village board about adjusting the village code to include something in solar, we can justify that by saying this is an area where we know is going to have an impact. Or if there's some other initiative that we can take, and we're trying to decide where to focus our energy and resources, we can use a resource such as this and say, okay, this is an area where we know we're going to realize some benefit, or there's some risk that we might not realize some benefit, and that would then help inform that decision. So that's one way that something like this could be used.
I think that's an excellent point. I mean, to use this study to inform our next 5-year plan is really solid.
Yeah,
it's really good. It will help us focus and prioritize, and then be able to measure progress.
I was just going to ask also, as obviously we've collaborated with other North Shore communities on the electric aggregation and that kind of thing. And I think that we obviously should move forward with this. I think there's value in doing it individually, certainly. And as has been pointed out, actually, we want some data that's specific to our community to sort of establish baseline where we are and everything like that. But I do wonder also, is there a way for us to sort of, the village or us in particular, as a commission, is there a way to sort of get the ball rolling on anything that also might be a more collaborative regional effort with other North Shore communities, and see who might be interested in working with us to further assess in the future?
From the standpoint of your ag consortium and all?
Yeah, I mean, I just would say the opportunity is definitely there.
I just was thinking, since there's a value in doing it both ourselves and potentially also about some other value to doing a sort of regional, sort of collaborative approach. So there's, I think, value to doing both.
Yeah, Andrew, I mean, I don't have a plan right now. I think that's a great idea. Emily, for example, I know reached out to me more from a like a work aspect, less from a commission aspect of talking about this further. Just like Max said, I mean, we have a lot of good contacts that are working on this at the same time. One thing that comes to mind is it's got to be an advantage if you know, a lot of us are, you know, kind of pushing these things together at the same time, and not having to reinvent the wheel, you know, from staff time, but also from, you know, just code amendments and, you know, that aspect as well. So, yeah, I guess one step at a time, but that's something we can definitely move, you know, work towards, and, you know, maybe, you know, start up some sort of regular meetings with local municipalities.
Yeah, because I mean, like, that would be good, because I imagine if Northbrook is interested and now we're interested and other people are, I think, sort of on the same page increasingly, you would think that you could certainly get some momentum going, you know, to work collaboratively also.
Yeah, the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus is an excellent resource for those types of regional projects as well. I mean, that's who our community solar program is through. And yeah, I just think it's efficient, and it's a great idea to bounce ideas off each other, and also kind of have like this united front of sustainability, you know, as all these communities move towards these goals. So great idea, Andrew.
Liz or Max, do you, a two-part question. If we were to want to go ahead with this, would this be included in what you're putting forth for the upcoming year's budget? And then if so, what do you think? I know you said how long it would take for them to do it, but do they have a lead time for them to be able to be available to put this together? Just kind of trying to get an idea of timeline, what we're looking at for this.
Right. I mean, we would have to research, you know, some other vendors as well. And so, you know, that would take a little bit of time. We'd have to reach out to 2 more vendors. We absolutely see this going into the next fiscal year budget. We're looking at electric aggregation 2.0 as a possible funding source. That those bids closed yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to review those with the consultant yet. But we don't see any reason why this wouldn't happen soon.
Okay, just wondering where, obviously, if we're trying to put together our plan for this next year, you know, we're not going to have that necessarily ahead of it, but how, you know, how much we're going to be able to incorporate the plan into putting together, or the report into putting together the next 5-year plan, or is it going to come after that? This is what I'm trying to get a sense of.
I think some of the work will have to be concurrent, but I would hope that we would be able to incorporate the inventory into the next plan.
Okay.
Does it sound like this inventory might be done by the end of this calendar year? Like by the end of 2021, like potentially, not holding anybody to anything, but.
Yeah, I mean, you know, after May 1st, I think, you know, we have a few weeks here to do some research on some other vendors and take a look at that. And then after May 1st, I would expect that we're going to hit the ground running pretty quickly with it.
Cool. Okay. Do you need anything from us to move forward? We don't need to vote on anything, do we?
Oh, right. I think right now we were just, you know, wanted to have this discussion and get a sense of your general reaction to what you saw from the Northbrook plan and your thoughts on sort of us pursuing this as a solution and as our goal for short to midterm. As was said, and we talked earlier, I think the budget hearing process for us will be in May this year. What is typical for the village's budget, then we would look towards an early June approval, and that's normally the administrative process of the village is I will be allowed to proceed with capital purchases that are approved as part of the budget, usually around the first part of June. So once we get through the budget hearings, which would be in May this year, you know, I'll have a good enough indication of what's going to be in there and what I'm going to be allowed to proceed with, that I would be able to start, you know, the consultant process. Given the estimated magnitude of the expenditure, that should be a relatively quick process. So, I mean, I would see no reason why we wouldn't be in a position to contract for those services. The dollar threshold will be such that I will not need to bring it back for village board approval once I get the services consultant selected, get the services negotiated. It's at a managerial approval level. So it's a long-winded way of saying I would think I'd be able to have the services contracted in June. And if it's truly a 3 to 4 month process, I mean, I think I would see the result in probably October, something like that. So what I would need, I think, is if we're on that sort of path, it will come down to literally perhaps the next step is going to be during one of those May budget hearing dates. There's one budget hearing where boards or commissions may be asked to appear before the village board for one of the budget hearings, and if appropriate, it would be the opportunity for the commission chair to come in and talk about what budget expenditures might be related to the work of the commission. And so if it's a what I'll call a contested or disputed item of expense, that might be the opportunity for the chairman to come and appear before the board and plead her case for funding or talk about the need for the work. So my guess is, I don't know that I would see that would necessarily be a controversial recommendation at all, but they might want to hear from John.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
I guess as far as, oh, I didn't, sorry.
Randy, go ahead.
Well, if I understand from all the comments tonight, for our minutes for the meeting tonight, it's the consensus of this commission that you support the approach that Max and Liz are taking, and you're urging the village board to go forward and to take a greenhouse gas inventory or to contract with a vendor, and that this commission is fully supportive of that. Is that the general consensus and what you want the minutes to reflect tonight? I think that's just a nice way of communicating with the village manager and the board that this is the consensus of this commission is. But I don't want to speak for you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. No, look, based on the thumbs that I'm seeing and the head nods, I think that's certainly the consensus. If everybody wants to just, you know, put a thumb up or thumb down, if that's what we're coming out with.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to our next item of business in the interest of time. Next is reviewing, and here it says review of other municipal environmental plans. And we had talked about this earlier as we get started in putting together our next plan. When we did the first one, we to some degree looked at what other municipalities were doing in terms of the things they were trying to include in their plan, the layouts of their plans, etc. So we talked about doing something like that, and presumably there are a lot more plans out there than there are more, I don't know, a lot is accurate, but more plans out there than there were 5 or 6 years ago. And so there'd be more information to draw on. Just a starting point as to figure out how we want to do the next plan. Liz, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, one idea I had, I guess, I was really interested in, maybe getting some help from the commission of doing, for lack of a better word, kind of a lit search of what's out there and whose plan do you like, both neighbors and just, open it up to, cities across the US and take a look at some of these plans and just see how they're organized, what we like about them. And I was trying to think of how to do that in an efficient and constructive way. And we just kind of did this Google Sheet idea with, the Sidewalk Gap program. I don't know, and this is just throwing an idea out there. I could create a Google Sheet, and if people are reviewing plans, maybe we could have like what city the plan is from, what you like about that plan, and just kind of have all this, this information for overview in one place. But that's just one idea for me. So I just would love to open up the floor for any ideas you have to, kind of just get started. So I don't know if anybody.
I like that idea actually, and then we could also include the link of the town, like the actual document, so people can do.
Okay.
Because I sent you that Elgin one recently.
I was going to say too, if we're talking about comparing plans, seeing what else is out there, I know that from just sort of local perspective, I did notice, I wasn't aware, but periodically I kind of just look at what other communities are doing. I'm always curious to see, what other communities are doing relative to what we're doing and what's going on and where there's overlap and all that good stuff. But I did notice that I think Morton Grove recently adopted a environmental plan of their own. And I think within the last, 6 to 9 months, I don't know, not that long, maybe I'm a little bit off, but I think Lake Forest also now has a commission that is kind of an equivalent to our commission. So I'm not entirely sure whether they have adopted environmental plan as well. I should have probably checked on that, but it could very well be that they are also either in the process of doing that or even may have adopted one. So there's something else to look at.
Another thing that we had talked about is having a couple people be kind of the point to Liz, as opposed to everybody just inundating her with, I found this plan and I found this plan, that we'd have maybe one of the subcommittees working on this as everything funnels through them, and kind of synthesizing what's out there. Just so
I think that's a good reason with using that the Google Docs sheet and everything, is that we can put a bunch up there so people can see it too, because more eyes on them, the better, and just little things, but not like.
Right, everybody would certainly be involved, just not everybody is sending Liz a lot of emails every day.
I mean, I'm wondering if the Google Sheet takes the place of reporting these to Liz, right? Like if we just put them in the Google Sheet instead of community.
It would be like a shared document, right? I guess.
Yeah.
Well, what would we be doing with these plans? I would imagine when you talked about the sidewalk inventory, that was actually doing some sort of qualitative analysis of the sidewalks and doing a similar thing, not just suggesting, hey, I found this plan, this looks interesting, but having some sort of criteria where we actually read through and evaluate and provide some feedback on what we think the strengths or the shortcomings of those plans are.
Yeah. And that's where that filter comes in, of not putting this all on Liz. And people who find the plans can also do that, but just to kind of figure out a way to organize it from this big amount of data that we may find.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's something we can put in the spreadsheet though, right? That the plan addresses, like the plan has categories for things like air quality, carbon, I don't know, whatever it is, and then strengths and weaknesses of those sections or something, like what's missing, like considerations for whether this is like regulating like public activities or private activities as well, right? That there's like ordinance things, or are these suggestions?
Right, like basically set constraints or criteria via the design of the sheet itself. And then since it's a shared document, people can collaboratively sort of add to it and sort of real time, if you will. I guess that could be a way of doing that, basically.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you could really just have the city name, the link to the plan, and a quick note section you can have. You don't even have to go on the other stuff, and then you can go from there and then expand if you want to do other categories, just so you can get the baseline of various ones first before going way too deep. Because then you could go too deep, you could go deeper into the ones that we like and compare them from there too, instead of having them all on the same document, because that's sometimes a little too much and too cluttered.
I guess my question is, how do we get started? We have to work off of some list. How do we know what to look at? So we kind of have to take this in stages, right? Do we look at all communities in Cook, Lake to Page, or, you know, we kind of got to, like I said, take an orderly approach and decide what we're going to look at first before we decide how we start grading them.
Well, I think part of it is also just to get ideas of ways other municipalities are doing things. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in Cook County or other similar, you know, fit similar criterion as Skokie. And it also, maybe we might want to look at municipalities that for whatever reason are different than Skokie and see why they did this, and if that would work here, or if that doesn't work because, you know, we're A and B different. And so we know that that's not, you know, that we see these kind of plans and maybe there's commonalities of municipalities that do those kind of things that doesn't work for us.
I was going to say also, I don't know what anyone thinks of this, but if we wanted to like make some sort of orderly approach to how we approach this, I don't know if it makes sense to sort of start like with, not to be redundant if anyone suggested anything similar, but if we sort of start with North Shore communities and then kind of broaden the scope from there, sort of looking at what people in our general vicinity are doing, and then we can look at, you know, more, broaden that out to county or whatever else we may want to do. I don't know if there has to be some sort of order, if that makes sense.
I think we should just look and see like what's like, you know, what things that appeal to us, things that don't appeal to us, things that we have questions about, you know, things that we feel like are not, you know, the right approach for us. As long as we catalog, I think, like which communities we're looking at, and also we catalog like why we don't like certain approaches, or, you know, why we like other ones. I think that's kind of fine.
Yeah,
personally.
I like that idea. That way we're not limiting ourselves beforehand. We just see what's out there.
Yeah.
I'm
happy to start a spreadsheet if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be, if you sound like you've got some really good ideas of
I'm like I can't even tell you how deep I am in Evanston's Corp one right now, and so like I have a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts. But yeah,
we welcome them. So
I will keep them quiet for now. Just allow you to do your own research, and you know. Yep. Okay, so I'll start a spreadsheet.
Cool. All right, and I mean, we can, timeline wise, we can, everyone on their own can sort of informally just start looking to see what's out there, and then once we get that spreadsheet from Emily, start putting things in. Liz, do we have a target? I know we're still kind of figuring out where we're going with this, the plan, but do we have a target when, do we have an idea of how this is getting from what we're talking about to being something that's published, since the process is very different than last time? Or Max?
Not quite yet. I mean, Max and I were just talking today about, again, you know, researching into some graduates, maybe for a capstone project, reaching out that way. And so we definitely have to do more work on that end. I don't know, I'm just because would the next meeting be a reasonable timeline to have some plans on the spreadsheet, and people are looking at them this month and just kind of see how far we get. Is that a good timeline for the first step?
I mean, Emily, how long do you think you need to put together a spreadsheet?
A spreadsheet won't be difficult. Speaking as an environmental professional, April is unbelievably busy for me.
Yeah.
And so I would personally prefer an extra month, but I might be in the minority with that. Liz, you might be on my side though with this one.
It's a little easier not being in forestry, I would say, for
Right.
April, but yeah, no, I think we can do 2 months, but if we can just get the spreadsheet up and people have a chance to review them.
Yeah.
I think that's a good
And then I
start.
think with having the sheet too, is that we can already discuss and do the things too, and then recap it really quick potentially too. Or we might even already have the answers by then. We don't know, but that's the nice thing about the shared document.
Yeah.
Yeah, see where we are next month.
And so when I set up that spreadsheet, obviously, if there are categories that you think we need to change or, add or whatever else, I think just until we get it all set, let's put everything in suggesting mode or some sort of track changes or change your colors, so that we can all be, we can all look at those edits. Maybe different color fonts would be the best, just so we can all look at those edits and kind of have a discussion around, what we should add. With the goal of maybe trying to get this spreadsheet together in about a week, finalized, so we can move on, not overthinking it. Just, yep.
Yeah, I mean, it can change as it goes, but just somewhere to start.
Yeah, I think that, there'd be an initial findings, but I think you'd quickly get to a point of diminishing return. So I think this can be knocked out pretty quickly.
So, okay, sounds good. So we will, everybody on their own can start gathering, and then once we see that spreadsheet, we'll start collaborating. All right. Okay. Then last item of our new business is opportunity for public input, which might not be a Google sheet, but on there, the first line item, item I or 1, where it says Citizens Forum 2019. I don't know who else was at that thing. I think Charlie was there. When Libby, you were there, and when we had broke up into groups at the end as a last step by topic, and each group was to talk about brainstorm some ideas on the topics, which were also provided by the people who were at this citizen forum. And so there was, the tablecloth was paper, so we wrote down, or one person wrote down, but the ideas that each group came up with, and there were ideas, I forget what the topic was called for the table, that the one that touches on sustainability, but there were a lot of ideas on that sheet. So that's one source of ideas to include into this next plan. Things that were discussed as things the village can do on the topic of sustainability. If I missed anything there that you.
No, that's exactly right. It's like we have this data and we took really good notes from that event, and I just think that it's a great starting point for public input for the plan.
Another thing is something to do is an online survey similar to what was done for the Crawford Avenue project, where residents could fill out the survey. They were also given something in the mail, which we wouldn't. For some people, got something in the mail if you live or work on Crawford. But a way to solicit input, see what kind of ideas are out there, and then depending on what comes in, would determine how we take that information, whether we, open it up to something more, or if there's not really much good information that comes from it, just kind of leave it at that. Yeah. Any ideas on any other venues or forums or whatever avenues for public input into the plan? Don't all speak at once. Another thing that I was just thinking of, and now I totally lost my train of thought. Andrew, go ahead. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, no, I was saying, speaking of like QR codes and that kind of thing, I do wonder, at least if we are going to do, I was just going to say, if we're going to do an online survey, and I don't know what anyone thinks of this idea, but since everybody gets the New Skokie and Skokie News, I was thinking that if we could work in something that goes out in the print newsletter and in the e-newsletter that like is a QR code that people can scan, that's one way, because obviously unlike the Crawford Avenue survey, which might be more targeted when it comes to sustainability, that's more of a community-wide thing. So I was wondering, is that like a potentially good way? I don't know what anyone else thinks, but might that be a good way of kind of sending out the survey, or at least one good way of sending out the survey, making people aware, and have the QR code that could link directly to the survey in both of those, in the newsletter and e-newsletter. I don't know what anyone else's thoughts might be on that.
You're getting a bunch of thumbs up, Andrew.
Yeah.
So, but
yeah,
I don't know if there's
that's a good
anything.
idea.
But yeah, because that would probably be one of the, to me anyway, most sort of broad, efficient sort of approaches to that. I don't know.
I mean, just to follow up on your on a comment you made like really early on in the meeting, we should also probably post the link, like the actual, that people can type in if they want.
Yeah.
The library might also be another good asset, because some people, depend on the library to use the internet, and so that might be a good avenue for outreach. And ask the library, like engage with the library to ask them to promote it.
I know it's a fairly intensive effort, but I like the idea of having community forums or even smaller groups. They wouldn't have to be a big forum, but maybe a sequence of some smaller groups, because it's a way to talk directly to people and get some outreach out there as well.
Yeah, would there
For
be?
sure. We had talked about, depending on how the online survey goes, if there's interest in that, pick up on that. And
yeah,
concern obviously is how to staff that, or how staff would do that. But if there's a lot of good information coming from a survey, then to have people maybe come out, or just do something like this on Zoom, where you can flush people's ideas out more and just hear directly from people and have a conversation about things.
Yeah, the only reservation I would have from a survey is that we may miss things that it would be something that we would be framing the conversation, and having a group of people in a room would open it up to things that we might not be thinking about.
Yeah, and we would need to make sure the survey is translated as well, so that we're accessing like different people who speak different languages. And then if we have like community forums, is that something that we would be able to like would we each like be able to host a community forum? How would that work?
I was just going to speaking of, because I think it sort of touches on what you're saying, so I didn't know what anyone thinks, but to adapt to the era in which we're currently living, I was wondering, is there a way to do something like what Charlie and I actually took part in some of the Active Transportation Alliance sessions, like about public transit and things like that. So I wonder if there'd be a way to structure some community forums similarly, where perhaps you could RSVP to them and then do some sort of Zoom meeting, webinar, or something like that, and do some, I don't know, would that something of that nature work?
I mean, the public forums are a lot of work. I would say it would be ambitious if every person were to host one. So, and from a time manner, I would think we might be looking at maybe one event or something like that. But I think this is all reasonable. So.
I was just gonna add that, assuming we do an online survey, I would think we want to get the business community input too, so maybe work through the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, Chamber.
Promote that too.
I think the challenge for me is how to come up with, or us, is how to come up with a good survey. Crawford had ranking on there. Just some way to collectively take the data and be able to maybe even quantitatively look at it and see, how do we rank the interests? And, I think that's important. I think it's a challenge that we're just not collecting data and we're not able to use all of those ideas in the plan. If we can figure out a way how to rank the priorities, I think that's going to help us.
I wonder, and that's, Liz, this might be an area where like a student in sustainability or something might be able to help us design a survey and then be allowed to use that data for student stuff.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Some sort of whatever, like if it were like, yeah. And I may have some contacts like as far as sustainability they're mostly in urban forestry. Anyway, we might be able to look into that.
Okay. Yeah, that would be, they were really, we had, for the last plan, we had students and I forgot what the exact title of their course was, or their field of study, either one. But yeah, they were really helpful just in framing this.
Yeah, that was students from UIC, wasn't it?
Yeah. They were taking some
Yeah,
seminar, but I
great
forgot what
things especially for a capstone.
Yeah, here it says the UIC School of Public Health, Environmental and Occupational Health Policy Seminar. So I don't know if we still are in touch with the person who was doing that. The professor, for instance, is there a way to maybe involve them again, like you were saying?
I mean, I can contact my school and see if there's any local students who are in the school of sustainability from ASU that are in this area, want to help out, or I can reach out for.
that would be helpful. Okay, I think this is a lot of good places for us to start. If you guys, we've said that you have people to contact, if you can do that, and then we'll see where that puts us, in getting started, if an online survey is the right way to go, and then maybe have more discussions just about how to do other public forum input type things.
Before we move on, Jenny, I don't know, I think Michael put a few things in the chat.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I saw the links but didn't click on them.
Okay.
Is this, oh, here we go. Awesome.
That Greenest Region Compact thing from a few years ago, they had gathered together a bunch from Chicagoland communities. So some of them look like they're a little bit older. Though the one link I've put at the bottom has some newer ones, but presumably even the older ones, maybe they've updated it since these links. So worth
you'd think once they
starting.
get started. But Skokie is not on here, no. Right, because we were after this. No, 2018. Where did I see Skokie? All right. Interesting. Oh, maybe we weren't in the compact. Okay, cool. What's the second link that you sent?
The second link is like their overall page, but in specifically has 5 communities or 6 communities, including Wilmette and Highland Park and a couple other ones that are more up to date. Although Wilmette's a quick look, it didn't have a plan, it just had a website, but maybe they have a plan, like a physical plan. too.
Okay.
I don't know.
I know who to ask in Wilmette. I can look into that.
Okay. Yeah, the Hoffman Estates one links to a PDF of their plan.
Yeah, a bunch of these link to a bunch of them link to either the PDF of the plan or the page with the PDF of the plan.
Okay.
This Hoffman Estates one is up to date, somewhat. Well, still, it's a couple years old, but still in play.
Yeah, this is a really good starting point.
It would be interesting to find municipalities that have a greenhouse gas survey too, and see maybe how they use that greenhouse gas survey in their plan. So I don't know if people are just out there looking for different communities. That might be a good thing to search for.
Well, the other thing is this. I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, and I can't remember how Skokie did it, but the Greenest Region Compact kind of laid out a bunch of things that people could use in their plans, and I'm not sure. I'm assuming greenhouse gas was one of those things. Because a little hazy, a few years old, but still worth looking at this.
Yeah. Do you what was her name? Edith Macra?
Yeah, Edith Macra.
Liz, do you have any dealings with her anymore? Or
yeah, I know Edith. We just worked with her with community solar.
Okay, so maybe we could even reach out to her because she's been helpful in the past for putting this stuff together. And my impression of their role is they want to help communities do this. So
they have interns. They have like AmeriCorps interns, so we could definitely also like reach out to them as well.
Jenny, are you thinking in terms of like maybe they can help us figure out how to grade others' plans?
Yeah, I mean, maybe figure out based on where we are, where our plan is, what other municipalities might be in similar positions to us, things to transition to, I mean, anything that, and I guess any advice they can give us to what we're looking to do, maybe an example of another municipality that has done that. Is there something else that, Jim, that you're thinking of that I'm not?
No, I think that Mayor's Caucus or whatever is one of those great resources where maybe they can help us figure out, if we want to improve our plan, give us some basis for, here's how you can measure yourself against others.
Okay.
Yeah, I can certainly reach out to Edith. That's no problem.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Okay, anybody have anything else on this last point? Okay, well then, our next meeting is scheduled, not scheduled, slated to be on April 27th. So that's, unless anybody has any major things that are going on then, that's when it will be.
I will be on my first work trip on a plane. So I'll try to tune in.
Wow.
Well,
in a year.
The advantage of doing it like this. Where are you going?
Orlando.
Ooh. Sounds nice.
That's where headquarters is.
Jenny, could I just take one moment?
Yes, I would go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say this is my last commission meeting as your liaison. I'll be retiring in next month, but I just want to say thank you. You're all really a remarkable, dedicated group of people that I truly, truly appreciate. And I just want to say thank you for your patience that you've shown me and the village board. I know that there's been times when our progress has not been as fast or as great as you hoped it would be. But it's been, always been my role to try to balance practicalities and with your vision to move forward, and you've pushed me, and you've made me a better environmentalist, and you certainly have given me ideas to express to the village board as your representative. So I appreciate that. And I just want to take a moment to thank our staff. It's, you know, every meeting we come up with a lot of good ideas, but then it falls on somebody on the village staff to have to follow through and execute on those. And, you know, over the years, I've come to truly appreciate our village staff. Max has been there as our stalwart, and along with Liz, and they truly do remarkable work. You know, right now, Max is juggling probably 5 or 6 major topics all at once, including contributing to our pandemic clinics with his staff. So they do an incredible job. And just to give you a small example of how good our staff is, I got an email today from George Isacu. For you, those of you who've been on the commission for a while, George was our liaison before Liz. George is a finalist for the village manager position in the village of Long Grove. And he asked me for a recommendation today, which I gladly said I would supply. So that's the type of caliber of staff that we have in this village. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. Max and I wanted to say something also, but Max, you'll go. I'll let you go first.
Well, Randy, thank you for your kind words, and on behalf of the staff who's gotten the opportunity. And you're right, there was Liz and George Isacu and Adam Latondra, and we've spent a number of years together with a lot of commissioners in conference room A. And you're right, there are a lot of good ideas. And so, you know, sometimes we feel like, and you feel like we're sort of the wall that has to be the defenders on some of these things, or we have to be the people that say no sometimes, and that's not always the best position to feel like you're in. But I have tremendous respect and admiration for the role that you played, and your wise counsel and your unwavering support for the staff and for the countless hours that you have put in, not only to this, just as you recognize the balls that we juggle. I know how many balls you have to juggle and how much you do and have done for this community. And I know how much more you will continue to do for this community. We're sorry to lose you. We will think of you often, and I can't wait to see what your next adventure will hold. We will miss you, and thank you for everything you've done. And I would be remiss in not calling on the memory as well of Pat Hanley, who, you know, put all this together and had a dream that this commission would be what it is. And so, you know, we can't talk about this commission without taking a moment to think of Pat too. And I know he would be so appreciative of all that you've done to advance the mission and the role of this group. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, echo what Max said, and not as eloquently, but it's been really great working with you and having you as our liaison. I think you've really, even though a lot of times we come up with all these ideas that we want this and this and this, and you've been a really good liaison and also voice of reason, but just listening to our ideas, and it's helped us as a commission, do things that we've wanted to be able to do, just to help further our work. So we will miss you.
I was going to say, because it's been like, I'll spare everyone my long-windedness, but I did want to say, and I emailed you earlier, but I did want to say thanks again, because I've been like, since I guess we've been working on things together since 2011. So definitely wanted to say thanks to you for all that you did, and certainly hope to keep in touch. Really appreciate all of your hard work over the years.
All right. Well, on that note, sorry, do we have any public comments before I motion
We do not.
to adjourn? Okay, then a motion for adjournment is in order, if there is one. Nobody wants to go?
I'll move to
Mike?
adjourn.
Mike and Libby, and a second. All those in
Second.
favor? All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
See you next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a great
Bye.
evening.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Randy.
Max. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you.
Bye.